There's a phrase you're saying multiple times a day that's training people to dismiss you. You think you're being polite, considerate, maybe even professional, but what you're actually doing is handing over your power, one sentence at a time. And here's what makes this dangerous. The people who respect you least are the ones who notice it most. They hear it, they catalog it, and they file you under safe to ignore. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what you're saying, why it's costing you respect, and the one replacement that changes everything. Let's start with the phrase itself. The phrase is deceptively simple. It shows up everywhere, and it sounds like this. Does that make sense? Or its cousins. Is that okay? Do you see what I mean? Am I explaining this right? Now, you might be thinking, wait, I'm just checking for understanding. I'm being considerate. And that's exactly the trap. Because what you think you're communicating is clarity, but what the other person hears is uncertainty. Let me break this down. When you end a statement with "does that make sense?" you're not asking if they understand. You're asking for permission to be right. You're essentially saying, I need you to validate that what I just said has value. And the moment you do that, you've shifted the power dynamic. You've gone from someone making a statement to someone seeking approval. Here's what's happening beneath the surface. Humans are wired to assess status and competence within seconds. We do this unconsciously, constantly. And one of the fastest ways we measure someone's confidence is through their speech patterns. When you use submissive language, you're triggering what psychologists call competence doubt. A 2019 study from Stanford found that upspeak and validation-seeking phrases reduced perceived authority by 43%. 43%. But here's the part that really matters for women over 45. You've spent decades being told to soften your language, to not be too direct, to make sure everyone's comfortable. So these phrases feel natural. They feel polite. But politeness and power aren't opposites. You can be respectful without being submissive. The difference is in how you close your sentences. Think about it this way. When someone you deeply respect makes a statement, do they end it with "does that make sense?" No, they end it with a period. They trust that if you don't understand, you'll ask. They're not responsible for managing your comprehension anxiety. And that's the key insight here. When you constantly check for validation, you're taking responsibility for other people's emotional reactions to your words. You're pre-apologizing for the space you're about to take up. Let's talk about where this phrase does the most damage. Scenario 1. At work, you've just presented an idea. It's solid. It's researched. You believe in it. And then you say, "Does that make sense?" What you've done is opened the door for someone else to take control of the narrative. They don't even need a better idea. They just need to say, I'm not sure I follow. And suddenly you're on the defensive. I watched this happen in real time with a client of mine. Let's call her Diana. She's 48, works in finance, brilliant mind. She'd present entire quarterly strategies and end with "does that work for everyone?" Her male colleagues would spend the next 20 minutes picking apart details that didn't matter. And by the end of the meeting, her ideas were so watered down they barely resembled what she'd proposed. One day, she came to me frustrated. She said, "I don't understand why no one takes me seriously." So I asked her to record herself in her next meeting. When she listened back, she counted it. She said, "Does that make sense?" 14 times in a 40-minute presentation. 14 times she asked for permission to be competent. Scenario 2. Setting boundaries. You tell someone you can't do something. Maybe you can't watch their kids this weekend. Maybe you can't lend money. And then you add, Is that okay? You just turned a boundary into a negotiation. You've signaled that your no is flexible if they push back. Here's what happened when Diana started changing this pattern. She told her sister she couldn't host Thanksgiving this year. Her sister, who was used to Diana always saying yes, immediately started with the guilt trip. But we always do it at your house. The kids will be so disappointed. Old Diana would have said, I know. I'm sorry. Is that okay? Maybe I can figure something out. New Diana said, I'm not hosting this year. You're welcome to host. Or we can meet at a restaurant. Period. Her sister was shocked. There was silence on the phone. And then her sister said, okay, I'll think about it and get back to you. No argument. No guilt trip. Because there was nothing to negotiate. Scenario 3. In relationships, you express a need or a feeling, and then you say, do you see what I mean? What you're really asking is my feeling valid? And the moment you ask that, you've given the other person the power to decide if your emotions matter. Here's the brutal truth. People who respect you don't need you to check in constantly. And people who don't respect you see those check-ins as weakness. So what do you do instead? It's simpler than you think. Replacement number 1. The period instead of, I think we should move the meeting to Thursday. Does that make sense? Say, I'm moving the meeting to Thursday. Period. Done. If they have a conflict, they'll tell you. You don't need to preemptively manage their response. Replacement number 2. The invitation. If you genuinely want feedback or questions, say this. Let me know if you have questions. Or, I'm open to feedback if something isn't clear. See the difference? You're still inviting dialogue, but you're doing it from a position of confidence, not insecurity. Replacement number 3. The acknowledgement. Sometimes you're checking in because the topic is complex or emotional. In those cases, try, I want to make sure we're on the same page here. This acknowledges the importance of mutual understanding without diminishing your position. Now, let me tell you what happened with Diana after she made this shift. Within 3 months, her colleagues started treating her differently. They stopped talking over her in meetings. When she made a recommendation, people wrote it down instead of immediately questioning it. She told me something fascinating. She said, it's like they suddenly remembered I have decades of experience. But I'm the same person I was 6 months ago. The only thing that changed was I stopped asking for permission to know what I know. Now here's what nobody tells you about making this change. Some people are not going to like it, especially the people who benefited from your submissive language. Let me be very clear about what's going to happen. The first time you state something without checking for validation, you're going to feel like you just did something wrong. Your body is going to send you alarm signals. You're going to want to immediately follow up with, is that okay? Or what do you think? Don't sit with the discomfort, because what you're feeling isn't rudeness. It's unfamiliarity. You've been trained for decades to soften everything you say, and now you're not doing that. It feels foreign. When someone calls you aggressive, this is the big one. Sooner or later, someone's going to tell you you're being too direct, too aggressive, maybe even rude. This is especially common if you're dealing with someone who's used to you seeking their approval. Here's what you say. I'm not being aggressive. I'm being clear. That's it. You don't apologize. You don't over-explain. You reframe their accusation as a misunderstanding of directness. Let me tell you about another woman. We'll call her Patricia. She's 52, recently divorced. Spent 30 years softening her language to keep peace in her marriage. After the divorce, she started speaking more directly. Her adult children told her she was different and kind of harsh now. She called me in tears. She said, "Maybe I'm doing this wrong. Maybe I should go back to how I was." And I asked her, "How were you?" She said, "Miserable. But at least people liked me." Here's what I told her, and I'm telling you, people didn't like you. They liked your compliance. There's a difference. Patricia stayed the course. She kept speaking with periods instead of question marks. And you know what happened? Her kids adjusted. It took about 6 weeks, but they adjusted. And now they respect her in a way they never did before. They ask her opinion instead of telling her what to do. They actually listen when she talks. When you feel guilty, you're also going to feel guilty, especially if you're dealing with people who are used to manipulating you through your politeness. They're going to look hurt. They might say things like, "Wow, okay, I was just trying to help," or "I didn't realize you felt that strongly." This is a test. They're checking to see if you'll backtrack. Don't. A simple response, "I appreciate your input," and then you move on. You don't re-explain yourself. You don't apologize for having a clear position. The transition period, give yourself 3 months. That's how long it takes for new speech patterns to feel natural and for the people around you to adjust to the new dynamic. In month 1, you'll feel awkward and second-guess yourself constantly. In month 2, you'll notice some people pulling away and others starting to respect you more. By month 3, the people who matter will have adjusted, and the people who can't handle your boundaries will have removed themselves from your life. And that second part, that's not a loss. That's a filter working exactly as it should. When you stop using submissive language, something interesting happens. You'll feel exposed. You'll feel like you're being rude or too direct. That's your old conditioning talking. But watch what happens with other people. They'll start responding to you differently. Your opinions will carry more weight. Your boundaries will get tested less. People will interrupt you less often, not because you became aggressive, but because you stopped apologizing for taking up space. I want to share one more story. A woman named Carol, 49 years old, called me about a year after she started making these changes. She said something I'll never forget. She said, "I spent my whole adult life trying to make sure everyone else was comfortable with my existence. And the irony is, the more comfortable I made them, the less they valued me. Now I'm making myself comfortable, and suddenly I matter." That's what happens when you stop seeking permission to have value. You start embodying it instead. Here's what I want you to do this week. Pay attention. Every time you're about to say, "Does that make sense?" Or "Is that okay?" Pause. End with a period instead. See what happens. You'll notice that respect isn't something you earn by being smaller. It's something you claim by trusting that what you say has value. Track it. Notice when you feel the urge to seek validation, and notice what happens when you resist that urge. Write it down if you need to, because you'll be surprised how quickly the evidence mounts that this works. Which submissive phrase do you catch yourself using most? Drop it in the comments. And if you want to know what to do when someone tries to make you doubt yourself, after you stop using these phrases, hit subscribe. Next video is about the one response that shuts down manipulation instantly.